Hello. Masculinity. We have very little respect for it because we're afraid of the toxic. What is the toxic? It is constant domination, the constant need to dominate others. And in some paradigms of existence, that is very necessary. Competing with other organizations. Of course, there's going to be competition in this world. That's how you keep things pure. That's how you find the truth. Competition is very necessary. To some degree, domination is a necessary component to the human condition. But love, the other side of the spectrum. Divine masculinity makes the world feel safe. It is the protector. It is the creator. It builds things up. Men who cultivate their individual potential. Even though we are all different, even though we all have different things to cultivate, thus give, men who do so out of love in order to give back to their tribe, their religion, their whatever their flag may be. They are the ones who birthed civilization itself. That's what the prophets gave humanity. The religions existed to create the divine masculine, and through it, create also the divine feminine. That is what made this world feel safe. It wasn't constant domination. Instead, it was the cultivation of both the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and through that process, us working together, fighting through tremendous suffering. Because right now we don't have that same tier of suffering, we don't have an appreciation for that game, but in cultivating these poles, we worked together and mitigated much of the atrocities that plague the human condition. And now, masculinity is under fire. The premise of cultivating a man, giving him status, not on his ability to dominate another human being, but on his ability to give back to other people, to cultivate themselves as scientists, carpenters, the people who make the world work, the garbage men, the tinkerers, the welders, the people who put and hold the world together, the divine masculine that makes the world feel safe, that cultivates other people, teaches boys to be men. If we disenfranchise this facet of the human condition, the world will be lost. And quite frankly, the masculine is not better than the feminine is not better than the masculine. They both coexist, they're both necessary, they're both mandatory for harmony. Nonetheless, though, if you disenfranchise one part of a very delicate infrastructure, the entire thing collapses. We need good, strong men who cultivate themselves for others. That's an integral component to how we made all of this work in the first place. But you don't feel the gravity or the necessity of that when the suffering is mitigated. You don't see a reason for banding together over great suffering when the problem is mitigated by the harmony of the feminine and masculine in divine order. So that being said, how then do we cultivate the masculine in this world when everyone is constantly trying to dominate other men, trying to disenfranchise them from being men, to keep them boys? How do we fix this? Well, the first part is to just not worry about what other people are saying. The world does not respect you. It does not want to give you respect. It wants to disenfranchise you at every turn. Every time you cultivate a light within yourself, the world tries to push you down. Now, the reality is, this will always happen until you become so weak, so pathetic, so self-loathing, and so disrespectful to yourself that you're no longer a threat to anyone. It'll try to push you down to the very bottom until you completely hate yourself and want to end everything. That's what's happening to men today. That's why the mental health crisis is so real and so high. Why it's never been like this before. To push individuals down by as much as possible, both men and women, as much as possible under the guise of empowerment, under the guise of you're cruel, using outliers in a distribution to represent the whole, it won't end. They'll push you down to the very bottom, and when you realize that, all you have to do is respect yourself knowing you're doing good. Regardless of what the world says, ignore them. Just try your best to do good. Ignore them. Ignore what they all have to say. Forget about it. Forget about what the world is saying about you, so as long as you know in your heart that you are trying to do good. Because at the end of the day, the truth always fights for itself. You will be rewarded in the end, regardless of what the world says to you, regardless of how the world tries to put you down, tries to laugh at you. In the end, you will always win. It takes patience, it takes faith, it takes an incredible pain tolerance. This is one of the hardest things you can do, because naturally, you do have a genetic proclivity to be very sensitive to trash talk and things people say to you. Of course, because that was a real threat in the past. That could have been a rock flying through your window, hitting you in the head, a spear. That could have been a big deal. You could have lost your life because of that threat. But in today's society, with the mechanisms we've created in society, even though they're not perfect, because us humans are not perfect, because we've created some form of law and order that has repercussions, as a result, for the most part, we are much safer than we've ever been. We are much safer. And so knowing this, you have to develop a thicker skin. You have to develop a thicker pain tolerance. You must look voluntarily for pain and transmute it to pleasure, even when people are insulting you, even when people are putting you down, disrespecting you. You must develop a thicker skin. You must transmute that into pleasure, knowing that you shining will have that natural response, because people don't want to compete with you. Nonetheless, though, the world needs you. The world needs you even though it hates you. Even though it pushes you down and disrespects you, the world needs you. It needs you to cultivate the divine masculine. It needs you to build yourself and contribute your individual potential. Because if you don't, if young men are all disenfranchised and constantly thinking about ending it, if they're so mentally in disarray and no one's there to help them or solve this problem, if this is constantly happening, the masculine is not better than the feminine is not better than the masculine. We have our own roles. In the end, we're equals who need each other. Naturally, though, if we do not respect the masculine and men do not cultivate their individual potential in order to give back to society, all will be lost. We need each other. The whole mechanism will fall apart. Forget about the world respecting you. It will respect you if you stop comparing with others and respect yourself. Because the game of respect in comparison to others is infinite. It will never end. You will always disrespect yourself. You will always hate yourself. You will never love yourself. That's an infinite game that you will never be able to win in. You may have short-term wins, but you will have losses inevitably as well. There is a huge cycle of karma attributed to that. What you do to others inevitably is done to you. That is irreversible. And even if you look at world champions, the greatest fighters, they often talk about how they are amazing now because they've lost so much in the gym. It's a cause and effect. The more suffering you endure, the more pain tolerance you have, the more humility you have throughout that entire process of growth, the less you suffer when it actually matters. That's just it, though. Regardless of what the world says, you must cultivate the masculine within yourself, because the world is doomed without it. It's a yin and yang, a very delicate balancing act, and the world needs you. Regardless of what other people are saying, the world needs you. It needs you to build yourself, regardless of where you are. To be a man who's loving, caring, kind, but strong, uplifting other men, building other people, making women feel safe, regardless of how other people feel about you, making others feel safe. Without it, all will be lost. We need you. The world needs good men, men of love. And regardless of what the world has to say about us because of an inherent negativity bias, forget about it. The same way, the best fighters are built through a team. They're built through a love of the sport and inevitably a love through each other. Their team working together to cultivate individual potential. That's what we are as a human race. We're one team. We may have different flags. The color of our skin may be different. But we need each other. We need to be strong. We can't be so sensitive to what everyone says. So as long as your heart is good. So as long as you brandish love. Love for your brothers. Love for the women of this world. Love for your sisters. Forget about what everyone else is saying. Just try your best from where you are, regardless of where that is. Just try your best. As the divine masculine. Try your best. Because if you don't, all will be lost. Thank you all for watching. And until next time, peace.